Hey everybody, it's me, Robert Phoenix, and I'm broadcasting to you live from Fredericksburg. Welcome to the AstroLivestream on Sunday night. Yes, it's a little bit on the latest side, but sometimes you just have to kind of roll with things in life, and that's how life is, right? How is everybody? I'm going to try to get in on the chats so I can see all of your lovely comments and stay in touch with what I'm talking about. And if you have any questions along the way, I'm more than willing to answer them to the very, very, very best of my ability. So let me just continue and let's see what we got here. Got to get into my account. Let's go to my channel and get this thing up and running while everybody begins to join in on the show, join in on the fun, as it were. Okay, let me just click on this. And we got 22 people. Yeah, there I am. Let's see what we got here. All right, I get to hear my voice 2 times. Like it so much. Let's see who's showing up in the chat room. We have the where's that chat? There's the Judy. My hair looks good. There's Darcy sending love. Glad we didn't lose you to football. Yeah, just for now. Yeah, football waits after my broadcast. Welcome to live chat. Remember to guard our privacy and abide by our community guidelines. So that means you guys got to make sure that you are uttering politically correct sentiments, thoughts all the time, because there is a censor called YouTube. And they're gonna, well, thanks, Jennifer. Yeah, I decided to clean up the act a little bit tonight. Actually, a couple of weeks ago, I decided to clean up the act. What else we got here? There's JMP Love. She says, I'm looking handsome. I took my handsome pills. They sell these handsome pills down at HEB, and I thought I'd get some. And I just started taking them. I don't know how they're going to work. They say you have to go like a week on and a week off for the handsome pills. So we'll see how that goes. How is everybody? We had a really good webinar yesterday, and it was our second one on thinking astrologically. I thought it went really, really well. I thought it went very, very well. And something really interesting happened. One of the things that I've been talking about is kind of creating this group mind where there are a number of nodes that are connected to the experience that we're having inside the webinar. So one of the attendees, one of the things we do is we look at like sun sign, where the sun is, where the moon is, and where Mercury is on the day that we're doing this webinar. And then what I do is I come up with keywords for the sun, moon, Mercury positions. And I've asked other people to do that, and they came to the webinar and brought some keywords for yesterday's chart of the moment for the webinar. And one of the participants said that something would be said during the webinar that would not be allowed to be heard outside of the webinar. And I thought, well, that's a really interesting thing to say. And I got into some interesting stuff. We got into kind of some current symbolism and kind of what's going on out there at a mundane level. And then at the end of the webinar, we started to talk about kind of what's happening out in the world. And a couple of people asked me some questions and asked me what I thought or saw, what was going on. And, we had a kind of a nice, well, when you talk about what's going on in the world, it's not always nice right now, because there's some very, very heavy possibilities. So we were talking about that. And then the webinar ended, and I hit the end meeting button. And unfortunately, the way that this technology is set up, you have to actually push the stop recording button, and then you have to hit the end meeting button, and then it shuts everything down. So Zoom does not have a fail-safe for not being able to, basically skip a step. So what happened was we lost yesterday's recording of the webinar, and so I sent it out to I sent the email out to everybody yesterday, and I sent out the PDF, which we do have. And I thought it was really interesting because of what one of the attendees said. And he said that we were not going to be able to, bring some of the information out of that webinar, out of the webinar. And clearly that was not my intention, to just end the meeting, but he was right. So it started this really interesting kind of group process that's, and when you get into the energy and the dynamics and the psychic sort of networking of a group, it's a very interesting process. And sometimes those processes extend outside the group. Like there's orbits, so there's the sun, and maybe our group is Mercury, and the sun is the actual content and the meeting and the experience itself. Well, there was a really interesting thing that I was doing yesterday. I was actually doing some research on the Phoenix. Right, the Phoenix is a bird, and also I was looking at Phoenix as a city in Arizona, because apparently there's some very interesting alignments with Mars and Orion with Phoenix, and also Egypt. And so then I kind of, moved into this temple of Phoenix in Egypt, where they have this bird called the Bennu. And the Bennu is associated with the Phoenix. And there's this very interesting kind of rock that looks like it's a pyramid. It's called the Pyramid of Bennu. And it's a very large, dark rock. It looks almost like too good to be true. It's almost, almost polished, this rock. There's a piece of it that's been cleaved at the top, and it looks like a pyramid. So I was diving into the Pyramid of Bennu yesterday, and then I get an email from somebody who's connected to the show and connected to some of my work, and really gifted illustrator out of New Zealand. Murray's my friend from New Zealand, Murray, and Murray's done some cool illustrations, and he's very, very bright. And Murray sends me all these links about Bennu, and it's like, how did he know I was researching Bennu yesterday? So this is not the first time this has happened over the course of the last week. So I guess what I wanted to kind of put together is that it feels like, and this is, I'm going to use the word feel. I don't have any kind of hardcore empirical data to support this, but it feels like we're kind of opening into this realm of quantum entanglement. And it's like synchronicity in some way. Like, well, there was a synchronicity that I was thinking about Bennu, and he was researching Bennu. But we were actually quantumly entangled in that moment. And I feel like, and this wasn't the first time this happened to me this week, there was at least 2 other experiences like this. And when that happens, it actually gives me a little bit of faith and hope that there's something else going on here, right? There's some other process that's taking place beneath everything else that we look at in the world and ascribe to the world, and sort of chart and track and make value judgments and estimations and proclamations and prophecies and all the things that are connected to that there's this whole other thing that's going on, which is really independent of the collective, or this layer of the matrix that we're living in. So I just wanted to share that with you, and bring it out to your attention and your awareness, and that maybe you guys are aware of quantum entanglement in your own lives, perhaps with your family, perhaps with friends. Sometimes it can be with complete strangers. And so what I mean by quantum entanglement is like the idea that there are these quarks, and these quarks sort of flash and do things independently of one another, right? Like they could be interacting in different parts of the planet, different parts of the country, different parts of the solar system, and they'd be interacting with one another on some level, and they wouldn't even really be knowing it, right? That they're quantumly entangled. And then there's a process that takes place, and you kind of uncover that quantum entanglement. And it's an interesting process. It's an interesting concept. We're going to get into some of that tonight. We're going to drop into a discussion about the vertex and what the vertex means. I like to work with the vertex. As an astrological aspect, it's been around for quite a while. Well, actually, I take that back. It hasn't been around. It's been around since 2001. So it's really been percolating for the last 18 years, roughly. So it was June, July of 2001. And it was an astrologer by the name of Charles Jane. And then there was somebody else named Lorne Jandro. And they both first proposed this idea of the vertex. And the vertex is representation of a point of transcendence in the chart. We'll get into that. It's also known as the second ascendant. And it's also, I think, what the third axis, the fourth axis of the chart. So we'll get into that. Yeah, it's the fourth axis. So we'll get into the vertex tonight, and we'll dive into it, talk about its significance. And I'm also going to pop in the charts of two people, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Been wanting to do her chart for a while, and I don't know if the time is correct. I grabbed it from another astrologer. I don't know where this astrologer got the time. Maybe it was just the time that she ascribed to it, but I'm going to use this chart. So put an asterisk when I talk about it and her. And then there's another chart that I wanted to bring into the discussion, which is he's a minor major player. And I wanted to look at his chart to see what makes this guy tick. So we're going to look at Ocasio's chart and this other guy. I'm not going to tell you his name. And even when I do tell you his name, you probably won't know who he is. But in the meantime, why don't we get into the chart of the moment, shall we? Let me share screen, and that way I can get you guys up and running. Well, there it is. Here we are, the chart of the moment. And of course, since we do these shows on Sunday night, and right around 7 p.m., we start off with Cancer rising. And there's the true node right there on the ascendant at 27 degrees Cancer. And essentially, the chart cranks up and starts up in the moment with Venus. Now, one of the things that I talk about when I do a session with somebody is I get into the role of the first planet in the chart. It's the first planet we run into, and it's an important one. In a lot of ways, that first planet, defines our experience with our chart, right? It grabs our attention. Other people hook in with that first planet as well. Most of the times, you'll get that first planet on the ascendant. In this case, the first planet is going to be right here with Venus. And I mean, let's say this is an individual's chart. All right, somebody's born now, and 20 years from now, people are looking at this chart. So what are they going to see? We're going to see that this person is basically, kind and caring. This person would be warm, nurturing, right? With Cancer on the ascendant, and with the true node here, very involved in other people's lives or daily lives with people, right? Wanting to fix things, wanting to mend things, wanting to, be a part of the day-to-day world in a way where this person would be emotionally connected. Now here we have some mutual receptivity going on because Venus is down here in the fourth house, and the fourth house is the ruler of the ascendant. Okay, look, the chart of the moment just changed. So the first thing people are going to run into with this person is, how kind of at times, how warm they can be, how nurturing they can be, how sensitive in some ways. Beneath this layer here, we have Leo. So there's some heat beneath this kind of sensitivity, right? And the sensitivity that's kind of around the late degrees, which means that at times it can be a little, kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? A little up and down, a little seismic, because it's at the late degrees. And I actually like the fact that this chart has Leo here, but we're also dealing with an intercepted chart as well, because we have the second house. Well, not quite. The second house is Leo in Virgo, so it's not quite intercepted. So we're dealing with Leo just beneath this Cancerian ascendant. So a lot of people have charts like this, and they'll have kind of a sliver of this aspect. The idea or the goal would be to make sure or somehow bring this part of the chart or this part of the first house up to the ascendant. So, because it's the submerged part, it's the buried part. So this person would be well served if they could bring more Leo into the ascendant, which would mean that Leo is more of a take charge sign. Leo knows what it wants, generally speaking. Cancer is off and on. Cancer pulsates. It's number one. It's a cardinal sign. It's going to initiate, but it's fall. It's not in the best position always in the first house. It's not terrible. You learn to live with it. It can be wonderful. Just like, astrology is about context. If you learn how to live with your chart, understand your chart, and try not to do things that are not part of your chart at times, then you can have a more harmonious relationship with your chart. So the one thing about Cancer rising is that sometimes it can be really on off. I want to go out, I want to stay in, I want to go out, I want to stay in, I want to be private, I want to be out there. There's some interesting things going on with Cancer rising. And at the late degrees, it's kind of, again, it's a bit seismic, it's a bit up and down, And with Leo here, just beneath it, the goal would be bring more Leo to the ascendant. Aspire to be more confident. Aspire to be, know what you want out of life. Aspire to know yourself even more. My son happens to be a 28 Cancer rising, so he's got some of this in his chart. And in his progress chart now, he's a Leo rising. So eventually, this person would become a Leo rising like 2 years after they were born, actually. So just keep that in mind. If you've got a first house where, part of the first house is one sign and part of it is the sign below it, it's incumbent upon you to bring more of that buried part of the rising sign or buried part of the first house into the ascendant. And I would bet that your life could be improved by that in a lot of ways, or at least it makes it more complex and novel. So I'm a Scorpio rising, 28 degrees. My first house is Sagittarius. And the idea for me is to deal with that darkness and, sort of the brooding intensity and of the Scorpio rising and bring my sort of Sagittarian sense of positivity and goodwill higher, raise the vibration up and bring it into the ascendant. Here we go, chart of the moon's changing. And when I do that, I basically have this intersection between, the late rising and then the other part of my first house. And it's doable. This is something it's not like you're trying to, it's like I'm not trying to be a Pisces in my first house. I'm activating Sag. I'm activating, good feelings, goodwill, positivity, seeing the good in everybody around me, expansive nature, right? So when I do that, it's an interesting blend and a synthesis of the potential and the possibility of the ascendant, no matter what it is, right? No matter what it is. If it's Virgo, we move it up, we have Virgo on the ascendant. Say it's Virgo, 27 degrees, 25 degrees, and the first house is Libra. The idea would be more Libra, more balance, more kind of, Libra is not necessarily a live and let live sign, but it's a little bit more of a live and let live sign than Virgo is. You know, it's like, okay, like take care of the details, lighten up and go have fun. Because Libra enjoys social things, right? Libra enjoys art and theater and music and, you know, glass of wine with friends. And the other thing too is like looking at it from an aesthetics perspective, sometimes Virgo rising can be really kind of austere, right? Like a person who won't wear a lot of makeup or dress down, because the nature of Virgo rising. It doesn't want to attract attention to itself. But with Libra beneath the Virgo rising, would be like, okay, you know, why don't you maybe, you know, put, you know, and again, it could be a man or a woman, you know, put makeup on, or, you know, get, you know, coif, or if you're a man, you know, have a shave and a nice, whatever, right? I mean, that's part of bringing the Libran kind of aspect up to the ascendant. And I don't want to make it sound superficial, but we're dealing with certain, you know, qualities that are associated with signs. So it's an interesting component. The other thing is, like, sometimes you'll have an intercepted house. Intercepted houses tend to happen more often when people are born either, you know, more north of the equator or much more south of the equator. The houses get bigger and smaller depending upon where you are, because, you know, theoretically it has to do with, you know, the curve of the earth and how everything sort of comes together, right? If you ever look at like a astrocartography chart, you'll find it, all the lines sort of like you know, they're all convex and come together. Anyway, so when you get an intercepted house, what happens in an intercepted house is you'll have one sign that's buried between essentially two houses. And for some people, that can be very challenging and very difficult. So if you have an intercepted house in your first house, you're going to have an intercepted house in your seventh house on the opposite side. And the intercepted house in the seventh house would be the hidden need inside of a relationship. Because ostensibly, like, let's see if we can do this here. No, not quite. Because ostensibly, you would have, I don't want to use my chart because I have an intercepted house, but I don't want to use my chart. But let's say you have the beginning of this house would be Capricorn, okay? And on the inside, you know, the majority of this house, seventh house, would be Aquarius. And then you would have the eighth house cusp begin, and it would be Pisces, right? So you would have, so it would be Aquarius. You would still have Pisces over here. You still have Pisces in the seventh house. And then it would kind of, you know, bleed into the eighth house, right? So it'd be Pisces, and then you would have Aquarius and then Capricorn. So you'd have like an Aquarius sandwich in the seventh house. That's an intercepted house. And when you have an intercepted house, it almost acts as if it's like a hidden part of the chart. So in this instance, let's say it's Capricorn on the descendant like we have here, and then we have Aquarius here, and then some Pisces here at the edge of the seventh house. And what this would look like would be that this person, and to some extent this might even be slightly true, that this person would want a relationship that is really like solid, maybe somebody who is older than they are, which would be indicative of Capricorn on the descendant, and maybe even waiting a bit, you know, later in life to have a very important and committed relationship. But that would be part of it, right? So you'd line up with that Capricorn on the descendant, like the person would hit the right, you know, they hit the right marks. Oh yeah, they make a lot of money. Oh yeah, they've got a great job. Oh yeah, you know, fantastic insurance and medical, and yeah, they're really seasoned, and they're, you know, they're mature and solid, and, you know, I can really trust this person, good provider. I mean, that would kind of be to some extent Capricorn. on the descendant. But if you've got that Aquarius sandwich, you know, that person may not always want that. That person may want to take a walk on the wild side with Aquarius and, you know, be stifled all the time by the Capricornian sort of sense of propriety and perfunctory nature that Capricorn brings to that part of the chart. And, you know, and maybe if it's the right person, maybe they get that too, and they can, you know, go out and, you know, go swinging or, you know, have a dungeon in their basement. Who knows? But with Aquarius there, the potential for the relationship becomes unusual, unique, eccentric, you know, out of the ordinary. So the idea is to understand what's buried here, right? In Pisces, which would be occupying sort of the final degrees of that house, would also, you know, play a bit of a role. You know, it would definitely play a role. So you get a Pisces 7th, Pisces 8th. That's what an intercepted house would look like. And the role that Pisces would play here would be, you know, the 8th house tends to be, you know, connected with sexuality and power and depth psychology and things like that. And with Pisces, there's not a lot of boundaries. You know, this is a person that could have like a really, I'm not saying this chart, but this would be a person that could have a very, very imaginative sex life in some ways. When I say imaginative, it doesn't mean that they would even have sex. They could imagine sex. You know, they can imagine what it would be like. You know, even with Aquarius, it would, you know, Aquarius is very different when it comes to intimacy. It doesn't, Aquarians deal with intimacy very differently than other signs do. So the idea here is to understand what's hidden. So if you knew this was your chart and you had Aquarius buried in here as part of an intercepted house, it would, and you were looking for somebody to connect with on kind of a long-term Capricornian basis, it'd be probably important for you to have a person who could be solid and, you know, show up in that Capricornian kind of way, maybe from a good family or whatever, but also, you know, take a walk on the wild side every now and then, or at the very least, bring some independence to the relationship so that perhaps both people can do things separately at different points in time. Anyway, I wasn't planning on going there, but I just wanted to give you some ideas about the intercepted house. I've had clients with intercepted houses, and it can be really mind-blowing how do I say this? At times, how uninformed they are about that buried part. I'll give you an example. Let's play with, again, the Capricorn ascending, and then, excuse me, Aquarius in the first house, intercepted, which means their second house is going to start with Pisces. So starting with Capricorn and then Pisces. And so this person, a wonderful person, Capricorn rising, hit all those Capricorn rising kinds of metrics. Cheerleader in high school. Okay. Married her high school sweetheart. High school sweetheart and her went to the same college or close by. He was a very successful doctor, great provider. Okay. So she hit that Capricorn rising mark, you know. She connected with somebody who her family could say, oh, great, look at that. Oh, you did really well. We raised you right. You know, all those Capricorn rising things. And then down in the second house, she had all this Pisces in her chart. Saturn in Pisces, and what else? I think Chiron in Pisces, and there's another planet in Pisces. I forget what it was. Anyway, so there was another side of her at that fundamental second house level that was really like mystical and religious and you know, deep and you know, filled with agape. And you know, there was a side of her that really occupied, you know, that part of her chart. And she was working, you know, hard to kind of bring more of that, you know, into her life. But what she didn't have a handle on is that Aquarian part in her first house. And the Aquarian part was that, you know, she wanted to blow some shit up, you know, but she couldn't do it because she was, you know, tied into a Capricornian contract on her ascendant. And it wasn't bad. It's not a bad thing. You know, she had two wonderful kids, and, you know, a loving and supportive husband, and, you know, had lots of structure and support. And, but, you know, very, very different. You know, there was a very different kind of peace that she wanted to get to. So the Aquarius was suspended between this Capricornian sense of duty and then this Piscean sort of peace around devotion. So duty and devotion. Duty and devotion aren't always the same thing. You know, they can be part of the same, you know, Oreo cookie, but they're not always the same thing. So the idea here was to get to the Aquarian peace, which isn't always easy to do, because in a situation like that, you have to kind of blow things up, perhaps. Oh, look at that. So we're getting closer and closer to that Leo ascendant. Well, we're almost at 0 Leo, 29 degrees Capricorn, sorry, Cancer right now. So how did she deal with this? Well, she dealt with it by becoming a publisher and publishing the works of, you know, a couple of astrologers, or at least one, and then setting up, you know, webinars, not me, setting up webinars with a very specific astrologer. And so that's how she got to that, you know, that Aquarian piece. You know, she found that little slice of the pie in her first house, and she honored it by being involved with a very interesting and kind of eclectic group with a very interesting astrologer. But ultimately, that group, you know, kind of, they had a weekend seminar, or like, you know, 4 or 5 days, and apparently just, you know, it blew up. It just got atomized, and that makes sense to me because she's got Aquarius in the first house, and this is the nature of Aquarius in the first house. And or if you have, you know, Aquarius rising, or you have Uranus in the first house, there can be considerable moments of upheaval in one's life. It's the nature of it, you know? And the best way to deal with Aquarius rising or Uranus in the first house is to make sure that you're living your life creatively, and that you're living your life in a way that, you know, keeps the gods at bay in a lot of ways, so that you're not, you know, stagnating. When you stagnate and your Aquarius rising, or you have Uranus in the first house, guess what? You know, your life will not continue, you know, in a linear fashion. Something will happen. I was friends with a guy who was Aquarius rising and Saturn in Aquarius in the first house. So one of the things that really like switched me on to this whole idea about the disturbance of the Aquarian ascendant was observing his life. And over the course of, I started to get to know him around 2000. I think we knew each other for about, you know, 16, 17 years. So, you know, you get to know somebody, so he's a double Aquarius, sun in the first house, and then Saturn, Sun-Saturn conjunction, close, right? I think so. Anyway, over that period of time, I saw some things in his life that were kind of mind-blowing, you know? Like one time he was living in this apartment, bottom story apartment. He comes home, and the woman who owned the bottom story lived in the other part of the house, right? It was like a little grandmother's cottage built into the bottom of this house. A nice house, nice neighborhood, nice pool in the backyard. And he comes home, and you know, his entrance is in the back. You know, comes to the side gate, goes through the back, and he looks over at the pool, and he sees something in the pool. It's the woman who owns the house, and she's face down in the pool. Right? All of a sudden, his life just became different. You know, he's got to move. Now, I'm not saying that, you know, God said, well, let's, let's flip this switch in this woman and she's going to go, you know, take a face plant into the pool and, you know, you're going to have to move now. It doesn't quite work that way. But sometimes the randomness of Aquarius rising will definitely, you know, it'll definitely present itself. Another situation, this one was much more personal, right? The weird thing about Aquarius is that it's personal and it's impersonal. Like, I don't think you ever really get to know Aquarian people. You may get to kind of understand them a little bit. They may be your friends, but you won't really get to completely know them. There's that detached sort of, you know, real vertical piece around Aquarian people. They're like, you know, it's the eagle, and the it's the eagle in alchemical astrology. And so part of Aquarians, or part of their consciousness, is way up here looking down, right? Anyway, now I got another interesting story to share that with that. But so one day, he's at one point in time he was driving for a living. I think he was doing some limo work, and he was hating it. It was really something he was, you know, not into. But he was doing it because, you know, he was paying his bills. Anyway, so he does this, and on his way back to dropping the limo off, his car cuts him off and, you know, flips him over. And he's hanging upside down in his limo car. They're gonna, you know, cut him out of the seat belts and everything. And then his life changes. You know, and he would go through these things, you know, on a fairly consistent basis, right? I would see them. I go, oh, well, there you go. There's your Aquarius rising. There's your Aquarian sun in the first house. You know, Saturn. You know, what are you learning from this? So, it's, you know, tales from the front lines of astrology. The other Aquarian story I wanted to share was I was watching a piece on this quarterback for the Tennessee Titans. A guy by the name of Steve McNair. He went to an all-black college, Alcorn A&M. And Steve was a really successful quarterback. And he loved his private time. He loved to go fishing. He loved to be alone with his thoughts, be away from the game. And they were, you know, his friends were talking about him, and they said, you know, as much as you got to know Steve, I don't think you ever really got to know Steve. And so I said to myself, he's got to be an Aquarian. So I looked him up, and sure enough, he was an Aquarian. So I just some food for some Aquarian, some fish food for your Aquarian. No, for your Aquarian consciousness, your Aquarian mind. All right, let's get back to the chart of the moment. Boy, I must be adding some air to the situation because there is no air right now. Anybody having a hard time breathing? Look at this. There's no air. There's no air. We can't breathe. Could you imagine? That's one of the freakiest things, not being able to breathe. It is freaky. Like the first time you get punched in the stomach, you know, or have the wind knocked out of you, holy shit, does your world get like flipped upside down or what? Sorry, it's been a while, but I clearly remember those moments. No air. There is no air in the chart. Hey, where's the moon? The moon is in Aries. No, Aries is not an air sign because it has air in it. Aries is a fire sign. We have the moon at the top of the chart. Getting closer to the ascendant. I'm glad that moon in Pisces, man. Friday, I was not digging that moon in Pisces. And we got that wide conjunction now with Mars, Neptune. It's like I'm ready for Mars, Neptune to move on. You know, it's like it's been a bit much, I think. You know, but it is moving on. We got a conjunction. Mars is at 19, Neptune is 13, so it's separated by 6 degrees. Tomorrow it'll be at 20, you know, what is it, 19 and 56. Yes, so tomorrow it'll be at 20, and it'll be moving on, right? Good. So tomorrow when you go to work, you know, that moon's going to be in Aries, and that Aries moon is a hot moon. Hot moon. If you ever hang out with somebody who has moon in Aries, they generally know what they want. They generally know what they want. They go after what they want. What can be challenging with somebody with an Aries moon is being with somebody else who doesn't know what they want. You know, if you have an Aries moon and you're in a relationship with somebody who doesn't have the same goals or isn't goal oriented or can't take action in their lives, that can be really challenging. Really challenging, because the Aries moon just gets right to it, right? It's like, make the change, make the change, make the change, move in this direction. You know, let's activate. And if you're not with somebody who can activate with you, it can be frustrating. It can be very, very frustrating. So right now, the moon is in square with Saturn, moon is in square with Pluto. Tomorrow, it'll be more the moon-Pluto square than it will be the moon-Saturn square, as the moon is moving out of orb with Saturn. So we get into moon-Pluto squares, there's intensity. There's a lot of intensity. You know, there are people that are hanging on to things. You know, people are hanging on to ideas about what they, should or shouldn't have in their lives. By the way, I've been sort of getting some info about homes in the western part of the country, specifically areas like Seattle and Las Vegas. And right now, homes are not selling. There's like more and more inventory on homes right now. That's not a great sign for the economy, just to let you know, if homes aren't being bought. And one of the challenges is, I mean, let's be clear. A lot of millennials are not in a position to buy homes because they're absolutely burdened and shackled down by student debt. Don't you think that that's kind of a strategy in some ways? You know, don't you think it's kind of a strategy? Well, you can't afford a home. Well, guess what? You can afford. You can afford this really nice 350 square foot apartment we've got lined up for you. And oh, by the way, you want a little bit of universal income? And oh, by the way, Stockton, California, I believe is going to be a test city for universal income. I think they're working on, what is it, 6K per year? I mean, I don't know how anybody can live on 6K per year, but I just read about this. Doesn't have a lot to do with astrology in some ways, although it kind of does. That would be moving into Uranus moving into Taurus, where we have this radical reorientation around assets and how we get them and who we get them from and what they mean, so it'd be like a social credit. I mean, not like a social credit that you would get if you were a good boy or a good girl in China and you didn't make any trouble, you wanted to buy a plane ticket somewhere and you could. It's more along the lines of being able to actually spend something, right? Right. Okay, so that's kind of happening. Now, in terms of the moon-Pluto square tomorrow, as you go to work, I think it would be important to try to stay, how do I say this? Try to stay as neutral as you can, because the energy is intense. You're dealing with intense energy, walking in. For some businesses, or some organizations, this may be a time where some people might actually be let go, and you may see that happen, and it may bring up some fear. When I used to work in the .com world, it was like nobody knew what was going to happen next. When's the next shoe going to drop? When's the next shoe drop? We're going to lose our job. Should I hold off on buying a car? It's not quite like that now, but I don't think some of the economic indicators are great. When people aren't buying houses, that is something you need to pay attention to. We do have this Mercury-Jupiter conjunction going on. I like that. This is a nice conjunction. And in terms of, kind of opening up the channels for, wisdom and understanding and higher knowledge, doesn't get much better than that with a Mercury-Jupiter conjunction. Although the closer Mercury gets to Jupiter, you have to watch out on how insistent you are about being right. That's a tricky part of the Mercury-Jupiter conjunction. Now, Mercury, again, by the time this rolls around about tomorrow, you get up, the moon will probably be around, 21, 22 degrees. So at some point, by the end of the day, we're going to have a moon-Uranus conjunction. That'll be really interesting. That'll be very, very interesting. So that's going to happen, probably by, 10, 11 o'clock tomorrow night. I don't have my moon degree calculator up, but I would assume it would be right around then. So I don't know, Moon-Uranus conjunction. Sounds kinky to me, if you ask me. Things could happen overnight. You know, something could happen very quickly overnight with a Moon-Uranus conjunction. In fact, that Moon-Uranus conjunction has got my attention. I'm looking at that, especially at the late degrees of Aries. It's like you go to sleep tomorrow and then you wake up on Tuesday and something's very different, right? Something's changed. That's what it would be like. And it's a very interesting place for the moon. It's not quite full yet, but we're getting there. It's close. It'll be on its way. Let's see, Saturn. Saturn is now clearly in the second decan, so it's moved into the Taurus decan. So we're dealing with money, right? Money and how the organizations and hierarchies also deal with money and assets and resources. And Saturn currently has a square with the moon tonight, right? But again, by the time you get up in the morning, that square will be gone. So, you know, you get Moon-Saturn squares. It's like, you know, sobriety. In the chart of Moon-Saturn squares, that's not a fun square. Moon-Saturn square people can sometimes have an overdependence upon their mothers or their homes. A lot of times people with Moon-Saturn square people find it very hard to be on their own, you know, stake out their own identity, their own independence. There's also emotion connected, depression with a Moon-Saturn square. And people who have Moon-Saturn squares in their charts and their birth charts tend to be a bit on the depressed side because they did not have, generally speaking, a great deal of emotion coming from the mother in their lives. This is more of a kind of an austere mother or an austere and utilitarian emotional connection and support. So if you've got Moon-Saturn in your chart, one of the things you have to, you know, really work on in this lifetime is to take care of yourself. You know, take care of yourself both from your living experience and your abode to your emotional well-being. It's a challenging square, to be honest with you. But over time, you know, anytime you get into a square with Saturn, over time things get easier, and the aspects actually ripen. You know, so that by the time you're ready to, you know, punch your ticket, you've just figured shit out. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, so what else? Anything else going on with the chart at the moment? Yeah, we got these squares going on. There's a lot of imagination here. Mercury square. It's wide to Neptune, Jupiter square, Neptune, Jupiter square Mars. Yeah, interesting. Could be interesting dream activity. Could be an interesting night for dreams. Very interesting. I don't dream often. I mean, I do, but I don't always remember. When I was a kid, I dreamt like crazy. And even in my 20s, my 30s, I was a mad dreamer. But not so much now, although I had some interesting dreams this weekend. But it could be an interesting aspect for dreaming. But there could also be some intensity, you know, maybe some violence or some surrealism in the dreamscape. And then we have that Sun square. That Sun square is going on to Mars right now. It's kind of moving out and away. You know, Mars is at 19, Sun's at 25. I'd say it's kind of negligible. It's moving out of orb. You know, the next Sun square really is to Chiron. And that's kind of, you know, that's kind of interesting. I mean, to me, Sun in Sag square Chiron in, what's the Sun's at 25? So it's about 2 degrees off the galactic center. And I mean, to me, that's almost like being in touch with, being forced to be in touch with some kind of universal suffering, you know, some very deep karma around understanding suffering. The Chiron square to the Sun. Speaking of Chiron and Pisces, again, same guy, same fellow in New Zealand, sent me an article about this robot that was doing this heart procedure. There's a lot of stories coming out now about how AI is failing right and left. And I'm just wondering what that's about. Why, I mean, you would think that they would like bury these stories. And if that's the case and we're seeing the failure of AI and it's being reported, what are the ones that aren't being reported? Or they're reporting every single time AI fucks up. Anyway, this robot that's been built to do these heart procedures basically killed this guy. And we're seeing more and more and more of these, the AI gone bad or AI gone wrong. When AI goes wrong, I think we can do a video of them now. We've got Uranus and Aries at that 28th degree. And I think it has something to do with it. Again, that 28th degree, 27, 28 degrees, the energy is really weird. It's sputtering all over the place. Uranus is technological. Aries represents, man or something new, right? It's something new. That's what Aries represents. So this new thing that's coming online is having its fits and starts. Let's put it that way. Okay, I'm going to check in with you guys in the chat room. I'm going to stop the screen share. And we'll get into some other stuff. Let's see what else we got going on here. We get into the chat, see what's going on in the chat. Okay, we got, let's see, 94 people. Glad we didn't lose you to football. We got to get caught up with the comments here. I'm way behind the comments. Let's see. After the Pluto square, Saturn should be a pleasure cruise. Yeah, right. Kind of looking forward to my Saturn squares. Saturn squares can be really growth oriented. This millennial is going to swoop in and buy our home after this second housing bubble collapses. There you go. There you go. Beyond Astrology with Miss Heather. She doesn't miss a beat. What else do we have? Let's see, millennials are Pluto and Scorpios. Yes, that's right. What else do we have here? No error in a chart shows that they find it difficult to communicate with others. This is true. Yes, yes, I'm here live and you are here with me. How about that? Oh, dang, Robert referenced The Sunken Place last Friday. I looked up what that was about and rented and watched the movie Get Out. Thought it was amazing. Get Out's very interesting. The harder it is to breathe, the harder it is to breathe. What else do we have here? Oh, yeah, thank you for ordering the webinar, Cato. Let me know if questions, anyone else in the chat, Robin, I did together, 50% off on my website. Yes, it's a good webinar. Absolutely. What else? What else do we have? Aqua. I'm a stagnant Aqua rising with Uranus in 10th. Going to have Saturn, square my Sun, Moon, and Mercury. Almost all next year, the gods are coming for me, baby. Yeah, liberation for you, right? And what else? You're a good astrologer. Watch your videos. She's great. I'm proud of Heather. Okay, what else do we have? Well, let's get into some charts. I wanted to pop up a couple of charts. So I've been wanting to do Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's chart because I'm fascinated by her in some ways, and I'm equally kind of I wouldn't say repulsed, but I would say that I'm not down with the concept. Okay, let's just put it that way. But you watch her, and man, she's got energy, right? This woman's got. She may not be right all the time. In fact, she may be actually wrong a lot of the time. But that doesn't stop her from having energy. Well, why does he have energy? Well, she's got this Sun-Mars conjunction, right? She's got Sun-Mars. Again, I grabbed this from another astrologer. I can't validate that this is the right birth time. This is the birth time that she used. So I'm rolling with it. I'm just looking at some of the, because we're pretty much whatever time during the day, you're dealing with a Grand Cross in this chart. So she's got that Sun-Mars conjunction. And people with Sun-Mars conjunctions tend to be really dynamic. They have a lot of dynamic energy. So she's got life force, right? You get Mars and the Sun together, that's like, it's like a 2-barrel carb. It's like a Holly 2-barrel carb, or 4-barrel carb, whatever you want to call it. It's high performance. And in Libra, this is so amazing. Of course, she's a social justice warrior with Mars and Libra, because Mars and Libra needs a cause. I've talked about this before. Mars and Libra needs a cause. It needs something It's got to find equality and balance and, you know, liberté, right? That's the nature of Mars and Libra. It is active in its pursuit of those things. When it's not active in pursuit of those things, it is argumentative. It's very argumentative. And it shows up kind of in its worst possible aspects inside of a relationship. So, you know, if you can use that Mars in your life where you're actually working for, you know, a cause, it's be great for being a lawyer. You know, Sun Mars conjunction in Libra, that's lawyer energy, right? Litigating, scales, balance, right? Now we've got 20 degrees here, the Sun 15 degrees here with Mars. That's a workable conjunction. If Mars and the Sun were like really up against one another and super tight with each other, she would be even more kind of impetuous than she is. And there's a lot of impetuous energy in this chart. Okay. Now, what's really interesting, she's got, now again, I don't know if this is the rising sign or the right time for her, but she does kind of look a little bit like a Sag rising. You know, she's got that kind of, you know, horsey face. She's got a bit of a horsey face. She's got big teeth and a long face. She's kind of gawky. I think she's kind of tall. I mean, maybe I'm wrong about that, but she's got that kind of Sag rising sort of, you know, countenance. But you can tell, you know, that she's, you know, living her thing. Again, wherever this is showing up, she's got that Sun-Mars conjunction. Now, some people say that she's not very bright. She's got Mercury in Libra, 9th house. So when you have Mercury in Sagittarius, there can be a bit of an overreach with Mercury in Sagittarius. Mercury in the 9th house can be like that as well. Again, if this is the rising sign. But really where she gets into trouble here are the squares. Mercury square to Uranus, Mercury square to Saturn, Mercury square to Neptune. Think before you speak, Miss Ocasio-Cortez with the Mercury square. Mercury square to Jupiter, Mercury square to Chiron. This is not somebody who thinks through things. I'm sorry. It just, I mean, look, even if I didn't know she was, I'd look at this chart and I'd say, the lesson here is to think through things. Think before you speak. Think before you think with this chart, right? Because you get in a Mercury-Uranus square, it's you know, it's like, it's radical, man, I'm radical. I got radical ideas. You know, Uranus in the first house, radical. Even if it's not in the first house, it's radical. Squaring Mercury. Squaring Saturn, it's like, okay, well, let's see how you put that into, you know, into action. Because Saturn represents, you know, the mainstream. And she's going through a Saturn return. Look at that. Look at that. So she's going through a Saturn return right now. Saturn's at what, 9 degrees? So she basically got elected on the ramp up of her Saturn return. It makes sense. Good Saturn return. But also, you know, here's Neptune hanging out here. Okay. So from a personal perspective, she's got a Mercury-Neptune square. You know who else has a Mercury-Neptune square? Donald Trump. Yeah, he's got a Mercury-Neptune square. That's right. So she shares something with Trump. And Trump takes liberty with facts. You know, he was basically schooled and indoctrinated by, what's his name? Oh God, the positivity preacher, Norman Vincent Peale. That's a real Mercury-Neptune sort of thing. Be positive, think and grow rich. You know, you may be lying to yourself, but it doesn't matter. Tell enough lies to yourself and they'll all come true, right? Fake it till you make it, Mercury-Neptune square. Anyway, but it also represents, I think, this interesting relationship between oligarchy and power. From a personal perspective, but also from kind of this mundane collective perspective. Like Neptune is like it's like a cloak. It's really close, right? 9 degrees. So Saturn's right on her Neptune. It's a very interesting time. I wonder if, you know, this could be a really revelatory time for her. I mean, I don't think she's going to have a revelatory moment because I don't think she's wired that way. But it could be. I mean, when you have a Saturn-Neptune conjunction, it's like, you know, let's stop everything. Let's stop everything. and let's take stock of of the life. What's working, what's not working. It's about really getting real, very real. The Saturn Neptune conjunction, or when Saturn conjuncts Neptune, right? Not necessarily natally, but transit-wise. But it feels to me like Neptune is this shroud that's cloaking Saturn, and Saturn, I think, is sort of the structures, the power structures that have supported her, right? So when Neptune is around Saturn, we don't get to see that. We don't. It's like a is she a George Soros candidate? Does Soros pair? Does like a Bloomberg pair? I mean, who got behind this woman? Who's pushing her agenda? Well, with Neptune, we may not know, right? It's hidden. And then it's this, it's tying together this Saturn-Uranus conjunction. I mean, to me, the Saturn-Uranus conjunction does represent some kind of socialism, which is why I think a certain swath or group of people are tied into it. Younger people could relate to socialism because of the Saturn-Uranus conjunction. Hey, it's Uranus, let's get all our shit free. Hey, it's Saturn, let's make up rules to do it, right? Oh, it's Neptune, where are we going to get money for it? Oh, it doesn't matter. I mean, just messing around. But this is what it feels like. Feels like this is sort of, this Neptune is cloaking her Saturnian, Capricornian influences in her life. She's got to think before she thinks. Now, here's what's really interesting. She's got all these squares. Like, look at all these squares in her chart. And people have a lot of squares. They can be tough. They can be tough people. They can be people that, go through things and overcome them, right? I mean, it can happen. The best case scenario can happen. She's got this Grand Cross. And she doesn't seem like she's a wallflower by any stretch. She doesn't really back down. She doesn't have a lot of fire in her chart, though. She's got that Sun-Mars conjunction, which is good in a lot of ways. But she doesn't have a lot of fire in her chart. The fire she does have is, I'm sorry, fixed. She does have fire. It's the moon, Venus, moon and Venus, right? Moon and Aries. So there's a lot of fixed energy. People that don't have fixed energy in their charts, or a lot of it, tend to, like, if they hit really tough stretches, they tend to pack it in. So you got all kinds of crazy cardinal energy. So she's really good at initiating, getting things going, starting the conversation, starting the dialogue. What kind of finisher is she? I would tend to think that she could go either two ways. One is that she'll just get tougher and stronger over time, but there could be something that could really knock her off her feet with that Mars Neptune square. And like, there could be something that could really, like, this would be like, there could be an event that would really cause her to see what she's made of, and how she would respond to life as a result of this. Like, would she buckle under immense pressure and stress, or would she get tougher? I think she could go either way, to be honest with you. There's an Aries moon. We were just talking about that Aries moon. It's a hot moon. It's not quite full. Close. Almost a full moon. She's got a moon, Mercury opposition. Again, that moon is hot, right? Oh, I feel something. I feel something. I feel something. Third house. I got to talk about it. I got to talk about it. Mercury on the other end of Libra. Hey, maybe you should, like, balance it out. That's the challenge. Yeah, she's passionate. She's got some fire here with the moon in Aries. She needs to deliberate more and balance out what she's actually feeling. Although I think there are, a number of people who really like the fact that she just shoots. Oh, you go to Yahoo, and Yahoo's like championing her cause every single day. It's like Yahoo's just making her into the next superstar. I'm not sure. I mean, I know why, but she hasn't done anything. But she's always taking them. So she's like the fighter, right? She's like the tough one of the Democratic Party. Mars Sun conjunction. She's gonna take on those Republicans. Just stick out their jaw. Take this. I do think that there's a sensitive side to her. Like I think she kind of does buy into the socialist trip. You know, with the Jupiter Chiron conjunction in Cancer. She cares. She wants people to have free stuff and free this and free that. She wants to make sure people get fed and get medical. I could see that. But all these things have to get reconciled. And they have to get reconciled over time. You know, squares to me are Saturnian. And you find out about things through time. You know, that's the nature of Saturn. You know, if she stays in the game for another 30 years, she might actually learn something. Might actually be able to put this Chiron-Jupiter conjunction to use, you know, and bring it all together. But I don't think, you know, this is a heavy burden in a lot of ways to handle at a young age. She's got Pluto in the 11th house. The 11th house, of course, is groups, right? She wants to transform groups, transform the nature of groups. To me, the 11th house is socialism. There's Pluto there. She's got that Pluto Jupiter trine. You know what that means? It means she comes from money. She's got money. This whole thing that she couldn't afford her apartment, that's not true. That's not true. She's into money. She's into power. Pluto Jupiter trines are all about power. And she's got a Venus Moon trine. You know, it's really interesting. Sometimes I wonder what goes on in the heads of these people. You know, there's this talk show host. What's his name? Oh God, he's out of Houston and he smokes cigars. He's very conservative, this guy. And he was talking about, he's a conservative talk show host. And he's talking about how beautiful she is, and he tweeted about her. And then he also tweeted about how beautiful Huma Abedin is. I'm like, are you kidding? Like, don't you know what goes on, you know, between those genes with her? You should, you know, really maybe, you know, take out a shovel and put on a coal mining helmet, climb down a rabbit hole. Anyway, she has this ability, I think, to be very charming, right? So the Venus Moon trine, and Venus and Sag in the 12th house. People in Venus and Sag are into truth. That's what they're into. She's got some charm. So a lot of Libra. She's got some ability to charm. She's trying to find the truth, right? Again, if she's a Sag rising. And look, true node in Aquarius. So she basically got, she didn't get elected, but she started her electoral process when the true node was in Aquarius and running on a socialist platform. There it is, right there, right? And if it is a second house true node, then she wants to ground this idea of socialism. I think she's a real socialist. I don't think she's playing. I think she firmly believes that, you know, these Cancerian things are intrinsic and important for people. But I also think that there's a lot to work out here. And I'm very interested in this part of her chart, right? This Neptunian shroud over these Saturnian or Capricornian forces that I think are kind of guiding her. Who is this? Who is this? And I wonder if at some point in time she may even go off the farm, go off the res with them. We'll see. She's already done it a couple times and had to walk stuff back. You know, her stance around Israel was very interesting. You know? Then she had to go walk it back more than once. She's had to walk back a lot of stuff. All right, let me stop the share here and see what you guys, if you have anything to say about Miss Ocasio-Cortez. When you're on her house, we give it her those wild. She does have wild eyes, yeah. Cuba and Alex look tightly wound. Sounds like she can be bought. It'll be interesting to see what happens. She will lead the charge against the old order. I predict post-Saturn return, she's going to change her tune. It's almost there. She's already attacking Nancy Pelosi. Yeah, she's going after the old guard. She's going to mouth off every chance she gets. Sun has Uranus, Neptune, Saturn conjunction. So your sun is a millennial. Rob says they garnish wages, don't pay off their student loans. She's going to turn Congress on its head. She's already kind of doing it. And then CV says not JOC. Okay, what's her stance on Israel? Oh, so her stance on Israel is that she's pro-Palestinian. She's pro-Palestinian, and she changed that tune very quickly, very, very quickly. So there's Ocasio-Cortez. She represents Latin America, one, because of demographic change in the district. That's true. She came out and said the other day that her parents are from Cuba, and she was addressing, I believe, one of these Jewish American groups, or one of these. She basically said, yeah, my parents are Marrano Jews from Cuba, so I understand the struggle of being Jewish. Okay, well, great. So that gives you some background. She comes from Cuba. She comes from a Cuban Jewish community, not uncommon for Cuba. Fidel Castro was also a Marrano. All right, so here's another chart that I wanted to bring up. This is a less well-known chart. This is the chart of, let me pop it up here. All right, get into a little share. Okay, so this is the chart of a guy by the name of Morris Dees. Mo Dees, and he is the head of the Southern Poverty Law Center. And some of you may be aware of the Southern Poverty Law Center. Some of you may not be, but they've been around for a very long time. And they've been kind of on this patrol, or on this watch to go after hate. Let's put it that way, go after hate. And they've gotten some, so they basically locate people, who are quote unquote hateful, or groups that are hateful. And they've got a whole watch list. I think, Alex Jones is on their watch list, Jeff Rents, all these people, right? So they do that. They also do a lot of outreach. And they were one of the main groups behind all the anti-bullying stuff. And I remember one time I was in Berkeley, and they had their canvassers out on the streets of Berkeley, and this guy who was, he's totally gay, and he was, talking to these women and trying to get them to donate money on a monthly basis to their anti-bullying cause, right? So he's out there, and he's, going through his spiel, and they wear these little red vests. So I was over here and I said, you know what they should do to these kids? I said, they should teach these kids martial arts so that they can take care of themselves. And that way they don't have to worry about bullies. And you should have seen the looks I got, especially from the woman. Yeah, she's like, who are you? Get the fuck out of here. Anyway, so this guy's behind the SPLC. And the SPLC has worked hand in glove with people like Google and YouTube and Facebook to combat hate speech, right? The SPLC, the ADL, I believe they also help write legislative or bills, help write bills for Congress, help propose bills for Congress. And while they claim to be anti-hate, in many instances, this is a group that is anti-First Amendment and wants to introduce more systems of control. This is my opinion. It may not be your opinion. Okay. Anyway, excuse me. So this is his chart. This is guy's the head of this thing. So he's got a sun conjunction with Sagittarius. There's that righteousness. Yeah, but it's another complex chart. There's that Leo on the ascendant, Virgo, first house Virgo, Neptune in the first house, almost in the second Virgo. Oh, look, he's got a Mars Mars in Libra, just like Miss Ocasio-Cortez does. Born in different years. 1936, she's born in 1995, and they both have Mars in Libra. And they're both involved in some form of social justice, right? Go find a cause. So he found a cause. He's got a Mars square to Jupiter, Mars square to Mercury, and a Mars square to Pluto. Very intense. People that have Mars-Pluto squares are very intense people. And, you know, they've got something smoldering beneath the surface, you know. I've seen Mars-Pluto squares in people that borderline on murderous rages. I've seen them. I've seen that. I've also seen the intensity of Mars-Pluto squares getting worked out sexually. It's a very intense square, right? Very, very intense. So what is he doing here? What is he doing with that Mars-Pluto square? Well, he's using Pluto, the energy of Pluto, you know, final degrees of Cancer, 28 degrees, and squaring off against Mars. It's a lot of force. It's a lot of power. If you can channel a Mars-Pluto square, it's a lot of power. Uranus is the highest planet in his chart, which means that, you know, it's at apex. So it's like, you know, it's got this, I wouldn't call it incandescence. It's like a neon sign, really, you know. And people that have Uranus in the 9th house they're kind of radical, you know. They're rebels. They want to have their own belief systems. They want to create something new, right? And in Taurus, so he's got he's coming up on his Taurus return, his Uranus return. How about that? He has Uranus at 5 Taurus. So he's coming up on that. Interesting. Very interesting. But, you know, this chart is unstable in a lot of ways. Where does he get his stability from, right? And he's been running this group for years. I mean, absolutely for years. It's got to be this Saturn sextile to Jupiter, maybe. You know, he's got Jupiter in Capricorn. Okay, that's stability. That's stability in dealing with organizations and structures. He's got Mercury there and a Mercury Saturn sextile. Okay, there's some stability there. This again is another radical chart. He's got Moon in Aquarius, Venus in Aquarius, squaring off against Uranus, right? Sun Neptune square. Look at this. He's got Sun squaring Neptune and Saturn. That Sun Saturn square could also really be, in a lot of ways, another kind of plank of stability. If you got a Sun Saturn square, you got to work hard every day. You know, it's like you've got a long-term project and a long-term view. Sun Neptune square, you don't know like who this guy is, right? He may have one intent on the surface, but there may be a completely other intent beneath it. That's what happens with Sun Neptune square people. You don't always know who they are. Okay. Anyway, is it an interesting chart? It's almost a grand cross like Ocasio's. So we have basically two kind of, you know, radicals in some ways, two social justice warriors. Both of them have Mars in Libra. Both are kind of almost in that very complex, you know, grand cross pattern. Heavy duty Uranian influence with Ocasio-Cortez in the 1st house here at apex, squaring off against Moon and Venus. This is an unusual dude. Like if you hung out with this guy for any period of time, you would find that this is a very unusual person. You know? And yeah, very, very unusual. What's going on here? You know, it's, to me, I mean, this is a chart, again, you know, it's kind of an unstable chart, but with this long track record of being able to do what he's done with this group, you know, there's some staying power in here. And I got to believe the staying power is coming from Jupiter, Mercury, and then the sextile of Saturn, and then finding some here, right here, with Uranus and Jupiter. I mean, this is the radical bent with Uranus here up in the 9th house. And the Jupiter-Mercury conjunction, well, trying to Uranus, give it some grounding and rooting it in a lot of ways. Fifth house is children. I get a weird vibe. I get a weird vibe from this chart. Let me see what else. Let's see what you guys are talking about in the chat room. See if you can even any feelings or hits on this guy's chart. Control freak. I've heard from listed as white. Yes, that's right. Same place. Yeah, moon opposite Pluto. Good grief. Good night, Shari. First husband, Vietnam, Green Beret, violent output, Mars. Mars Pluto square people are intense, man. I have an exact under 1 degree Mars Pluto square. Well, I hope you've worked that out, CV. It's not necessarily bad if you can work it out. Okay, we are now into the 90th minute of the show. So I just wanted to get into the Vertex for a little bit before we get on out of here. The Vertex is something that's asked about in charts. And the Vertex is a byproduct of the intersection between the elliptic and the elliptic plane and the prime meridian, right? And it generally happens between the 5th and the 9th houses on what we call the western side of the chart. Okay, so I'll show you what it looks like. I'll show you as a symbol. I'll show you what the ecliptic looks like, and you guys can. I'm sorry, the vertex. The vertex looks like, so that you guys can understand astrology, or at least begin to see what the symbol looks like. And then I'll get into what the significance of the vertex is. We have Vertex Pharmaceuticals. How about that? Do this. Okay. So, one second here, just so you guys can understand it. It looks like here. Let's do this. Okay, so the symbol for the vertex looks like this. Let's do this here. Okay, so all right, so you guys can. I don't want that. Stop the share. Okay. This is what it looks like. You got the V and the X. It was discovered in 2001. It's been around for about 18 years now. Okay, that's what the vertex looks like. I'll show you how to get to the vertex. So I'm going to do another screen share, and I'm going to take you into astro.com, which is a good place to be able to find it. And I'm going to do another screen share here. Give me one sec, and I'll show you how it's done. Okay, so I'm going to use my chart as an example. You go over here. If you've entered your information into astro.com and you've got your chart, you go over here and you go to extended chart selection. You click on that. Okay. So you're going to see the back end of my chart. So you go all the way down here to the bottom. Give me one sec. So you go over here and you can see where it has like additional objects and stuff like that. You know, part of fortune. Oh, look, there's the vertex. I'm going to highlight that, and then I'm going to click here to show the chart. Now my chart will show up with the vertex in it. Okay, so here's my vertex, and it is right here at 11 degrees Cancer. Okay, so the vertex is also known as the second ascendant, or one of the 5 axes. Now, it's going to always show up over here on the western side of the chart between house 9 and house 5 because of the equation between the prime meridian and the ecliptic, okay? So what does that mean? What is the vertex actually? So astrologers believe that the vertex is a point of transcendence or a gateway. I've often ascribed the meaning of a portal to the vertex because it's like you have this opening inside the chart, and the opening represents something that you can go deeper into inside the chart, inside your life, like it's an important piece, right? So here would be the 8th house. So it'd have to do with either, you know, other people's money or the underworld or sex, right? Then we have here, it would be the sign of Cancer, which would be nurturing and all those Cancerian things. So in order for me to connect with my vertex, right, I'd have to explore what that means. The vertex is usually used most significantly with synastry charts. So if somebody's Venus is within a 2-degree orbit of your vertex, it's actually a really, really good and important piece. If somebody's sun is in 2 degrees of an orb, 2 degrees is about the orb that you use. Looks like it's very significant. That's a relationship you should pay attention to. So again, it's going to show between the 9th house and the 5th house. So they're going to be dealing with, you know, creativity and love and play and children and fun, health or healing, or you know, your dharma, your work or relationships, or, you know, what's, you know, crawling around in, you know, the inside of your psyche, or, you know, higher consciousness. The other side of the vertex is what's called the anti-vertex, which it happens to be, like, you know, challenging. The axes of the charts tend to be the ascendant, the descendant, that's one axis, the midheaven, and then the IC, that's another axis, the true node and the south node, that's another axis, and then the vertex and the anti-vertex. I don't have the anti-vertex there. It'd be too complicated for me. I'd blow a fuse right now if I had to look into that. So the vertex is a point of transcendence. It's where you can go into something, right, and move into kind of another dimension, another layer, another level in some ways. So everybody has their relationship with the vertex, and, you know, explore what sign it's in, explore what house it's in. Look at the Sabian symbol for your vertex. See if there's somebody that you know in your life that has a planet around your vertex. I would imagine that somebody in the chat room, at least one or two of you, have had a love affair with somebody with either a sun or Venus on your vertex. Any of the personal planets, sun, Venus, moon, on the vertex are very important and bear witnessing. Saturn, somebody's Saturn on your vertex could be quite challenging. There'd almost be like, there'd be this karmic kind of piece that you'd have to explore with that person. You couldn't get out of it. It'd be like an agreement, you know. They would teach you something about that. So anyway, that's a very topical, I don't want to say superficial, but it's a light touch explanation of the vertex. Again, you're going to get it because it's it is an equation, and it's the relationship between prime vertical and the ecliptic, right? And then you're going to, once that's determined, and you can do that just how I showed you, it's going to show up in your chart, and it's worth exploring. And it's especially useful when it comes to synastry and looking at other people's planets if they're conjunct your vertex. Okay, there we go. All right, I think I'm going to wrap it up here. What do we have? Whose chart? That's my chart. That's my chart. A lot of people say, oh, how can you show your chart? I don't give a shit. You know, it's my chart, whatever, it's fine. You know, secrets or legacy. Your moon is on my sun. Oh, how about that? About that. Is the full moon in December 22nd on your Mars. Yes, it is. It is exactly on my Mars. Good call. It is on my Mars. Yes. And I'll be in California. The anti-vertex conjunct part of fortune in synastry. Wow, that's a bit much. I'll blow my fuse if I get into that. The anti-vertex conjunct part of fortune. I think the anti-vertex conjunct part of fortune would mean that if you explore your anti-vertex, you'll get something out of it. That's what I think. My 45 12th stellium is an anti-vertex. Makes some kind of strange sense. Okay, I'm out of here. Thank you for being here, for showing up. I believe this is going to be the last. I think this is going to be the last 11th house before the new year. We'll see. Next week is the 23rd. We'll see. I'll be in California on December 22nd. Yes, that's when it'll be. So we'll see. Maybe next week. Maybe next week. Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you, Judy. And bless you all. Bless you all for showing up. Thank you for hanging out. And have a wonderful week. I'm going to be doing 2 flames this week and then shutting down on Wednesday and kicking in with the holidays. Have a happy Saturnalia, each and every one of you. And use your head to discern what's real, your heart to set what's possible. Thank you. Have a good night.